Commander Zixtita's primary tentacles trembled as the scanner confirmed what should have been impossible, a life sign. On Kepler 4-4 to be. Recalibrate the sensors, she ordered, her chromatophores flashing urgent yellow. Equipment malfunction is the only logical explanation. Her science officer, Corinth, ran the diagnostic for the third time. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of absolute certainty among the Valkyrie. Commander, the readings are accurate. 1 biological signature, mobile, approximately 2 kilometers from the crashed vessel. The bridge fell silent. Every member of the rescue team understood what those readings meant, or rather, what they couldn't mean. Kepler 442b was a Category 9 death world. Gravity at 1.8 standard. Atmospheric pressure that would crush most species' organs. Radiation levels that killed unshielded biologicals in hours. The human exploration vessel had crashed here 7 planetary rotations ago, 168 standard hours. Nothing survived that long on a Category 9. Sir, Corinth's voice wavered. The signature. It's moving toward us. Zixtita's 3 hearts began their stress rhythm. She'd served in the Galactic Rescue Corps for 40 cycles, had pulled survivors from asteroid fields, derelict stations, even a collapsing star's corona, but she'd never attempted a retrieval from a death world. Protocol was clear. Category 7 and above were write-offs. No recovery attempts. The risk to rescue crews was deemed unacceptable by every civilized species in the Galactic Council. Humans, of course, weren't on the Council yet. Maintain position, at minimum safe distance, she commanded. Full shields. Prepare a drone for remote observation. The drone launched, its reinforced hull groaning under the planet's oppressive gravity. Through its feed, they watched the hellscape below. Jagged obsidian formations jutting from ground that sparked with electrical discharge. Atmosphere so thick with metallic particles, it looked like flowing mercury, periodic geysers of acid rain that hissed against stone, and through it all, something walked. The figure was bipedal, wrapped in what appeared to be fragments of emergency shielding, and was that local mineral formation. The drone's zoom function activated, and Corinth made a sound the translator couldn't parse. Commander, the survivor appears to have constructed armor from native materials. The human 4, what else could survive its own ship's crash had? Indeed, fashioned crude protection from the planet's own hostile elements. Plates of volcanic glass were bound with strips of metal from the wreckage, creating a patchwork shell. But it was the movement that made Zixtita's respiratory sacs contract. Steady, measured, not the desperate scramble of a dying creature, but the purposeful stride of something adapted. Establishing communication, Corinth announced. The universal greeting broadcast through the drone's speakers, offering assistance, requesting status. The figure stopped, tilted its head, a gesture. Zixtita, recognized from the human cultural database, and spoke. The translator took several seconds to parse the radiation-distorted audio. About time someone showed up. I was starting to run low on water. Water. The human was concerned about water, not the gravity crushing its skeletal structure, not the radiation cooking its cells, not the atmospheric pressure that should have liquefied its internal organs. Water. Prep the emergency extraction pod, Zixtita ordered, though she knew it was useless. The pod was rated for Category 6 environments, maximum. Sending it to the surface would be like dropping an egg into a fusion reactor. With respect, Commander, her engineer Jarl interjected, the pod won't survive atmospheric entry. The pressure differential alone, I know. She turned to the view screen where the human had resumed walking. Open direct communication. Maybe we can at least actually. The human's voice crackled through the I've been thinking about that. Your extraction pods use compressed gas cushioning for pressure equalization, right? I saw the specs on a cultural exchange program. If you could drop one unmanned, I could probably modify it. The wreckage has plenty of heat-resistant alloys. I could modify it. Corinth's translator glitched on the emphasis. You're suggesting field modifications to precision rescue equipment. A sound came through the comm that the computer identified as laughter. Zixtita had read about this human response to absurdity, but hearing it from someone standing on a death world was deeply unsettling. Look, I've been here a week. I've figured out the pressure thing. You just have to equalize gradually. Built a shelter that handles the acid rain. Even found some local fungus that's edible if you char it enough. The radiation's actually the easy part, if you know what minerals to use for shielding. Drop the pod. Give me ... 6 hours. I'll have it surface ready. The bridge crew exchanged glances of bewilderment. The humans spoke of surviving on Kepler-4 for to be like it was a minor inconvenience, a problem to be solved rather than an inevitable death sentence. The fungus is edible, Yarail whispered in horror. Zixtita made the decision that would later be studied in every Rescue Corps academy. Send the pod. Include emergency tools and a technical manual. Commander, do it. 4 hours and 30 minutes later, the modified pod rose from Kepler-4 for 2B's surface. The human had not only survived the descent, but had reinforced the hull with a ceramic composite made from local materials. Installed a pressure gradient system using parts from their crashed ship, and somehow managed to include a sample container with 17 specimens of what they called potentially useful stuff. As the pod docked and decontamination began, Zixtita found herself recalibrating everything she knew about survival. The airlock hissed open, and the humans stepped out, a young female. According to the database designation, Dr. Sarah Chen. Thanks for the ride, Dr. Chen said, pulling off the improvised helmet. Her face showed signs of radiation exposure, stress, and fatigue. But her eyes held something Zixtita had never seen in a death world. Survivor, because there had never been a death world survivor before. Satisfaction. How? Zixtita asked, abandoning all protocol. The gravity alone should have. Oh, that. Dr. Chen shrugged another human gesture, indicating dismissal of danger. Humans evolved on a death world, remember? Earth's just a Category 6, officially. But our ancestors dealt with ice ages, supervolcanoes, mass extinctions. We're basically built for this kind of thing. The tricky part was the acid rain, but once I figured out the pattern, you detected a pattern in the acid rain. Everything has a pattern, if you watch long enough. Planetary rotation, atmospheric pressure changes, even chaos has rules. Day 3, I could predict the geysers within a 2-minute window. By day 5, I was using them to cook with. Corinth's chromatophores had gone pale blue, the Velkari equivalent of shock. You used environmental hazards as tools. Well, yeah. No point fighting a world. You just have to convince it you belong there. In her 40 cycles of service, Commander Zixtita had rescued miners from collapsed asteroids, diplomats from political prisoners, even a Thurian prince from his own poisoned atmosphere. But she had never, in all those cycles, rescued someone who didn't want to be rescued so much as they wanted a ride home. The report she filed that night would change galactic policy forever. The Rescue Corps' manual would need a new chapter, one that accounted for a species that didn't just survive hostile environments, but adapted to them, learned from them, conquered them, not through technology, but through sheer, incomprehensible stubbornness. The title of that chapter would be simple: Human Protocols. The first line would read, "When recovering humans from hostile environments, be prepared for anything, especially the impossible." Dr. Chen spent the return journey teaching Jarl how to synthesize nutrients from basically anything organic, showing Corinth her handwritten notes on Kepler-4 for 2B's ecosystem, and explaining to anyone who would listen how the planet's electromagnetic field could be harnessed for power with just some copper wire and patience. When they finally docked at Gamma Station, the human paused at the airlock, turned back to Zixtita, and smiled an expression the commander was beginning to associate with imminent paradigm shifts. Thanks again for the lift. Hey, have you ever heard of Proxima Centauri C, Category 10 DEATHWORLD? I'm thinking of proposing an expedition. Interested? Zix Theta S chromatophores flashed through 17 different colors before settling on resignation. She looked at this impossible survivor, this human who had turned a death sentence into a camping trip, and realized a galaxy would never be the same. I'll file the paperwork, she said, because if she'd learned anything from the survivor of Kepler 4 to be, it was that where humans were concerned. Impossible was just another word for Tuesday. The Galactic Council would convene an emergency session 3 days later. After Dr. Chen's casual report on exploitable resources on Category 9+ worlds reached the Economic Committee, the vote to fast-track humanity's membership would be unanimous. Not out of respect, out of self-preservation. If they were going to survive in a galaxy with humans, they needed to keep a very close eye on them. 3 weeks after the Kepler 4 to be incident, Ambassador Threxenol of the Galactic Council found himself in the unprecedented position of being terrified of a species application, VID. The holographic projection showed Dr. Sarah Chunell, infamous, throughout Council space standing in front of a detailed presentation. Behind her, a rotation of Proxima Centauri C spun lazily, its surface a nightmarish swirl of superstorms, each one capable of stripping the hull from a battlecruiser. As you can see from these readings, Dr. Chen gestured casually at data that made Threxenol's secondary brain throb. Proxima C offers unique opportunities for resource extraction. The constant electromagnetic storms create naturally occurring superconductors in the crystalline formations. The pressure at sea level, if you can call oceans of liquid methane seas, actually facilitates fusion reactions in certain mineral deposits. The council chamber, built to accommodate 347 different species' environmental needs, had never been so quiet. Even the methane-breathing Vorthan delegation had stopped bubbling. Dr. Chen Threxenol managed, his translator struggling with the concept. You're proposing to establish a mining operation on a Category 10 DEATHWORLD. Research station first, she corrected, switching to a new slide that showed architectural plans. Mining comes later. We'll need about 6 months to properly survey the bay. The storms alone generate winds of 2,000 kilometers per hour. 2,347 on average, actually, but they're predictable. Proxima C has a really interesting triple system that creates these tidal electromagnetic patterns. Once you map those, you can find the calm zones. They last about 6 hours each, perfect for construction windows. Commander Zix Theta, who had been required to attend as a witness, watched the proceedings with what humans might call morbid fascination. In the weeks since the rescue, she'd been assigned as military liaison to the human delegation, a position created specifically because no existing protocol covered a species that treated DEATHWORLDs like vacation destinations. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Yareth of the Bendathi Collective, we could discuss the actual crew requirements for such an endeavor. Surely you don't expect, oh, we already have volunteers. Dr. Chen switched to another slide. Human faces smiled back at the council, each with a brief bio. This is just from the initial interest posting. We've had over 3,000 applications since yesterday. 3,000. Yarith's melodic voice cracked. Well, yeah. Do you know how rare it is to get to study a Cat-10 up close? Professor Martinez here, she highlighted one smiling face, literally cried when I showed him the mineral composition data. And this is Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She's developed a new pressure suit designed specifically for the environment. She's been wanting to field test it for years. Threxenol pulled up humanity's file, still woefully thin, despite their recent entry into council awareness. Species, human, homeworld, Earth Category 6. Population, 11.2 billion. Technological rating, marginal, with space. Threat assessment, pending. He made a mental note to update that last part too. Extremely high. The liability alone, another counselor began. Oh, we've drafted waivers. Dr. Chen produced a document that materialized on everyone's personal displays. Pretty standard stuff. Acknowledgement of risk, next of kin notifications, the usual, although we did add a clause about recovered remains being used for scientific purposes, if retrieval isn't feasible. Waste not, want not. The Vorthen delegate actually stopped breathing. Several species threat displays activated involuntarily. Zick leaned forward. She'd spent enough time with humans now to recognize the signs. Dr. Chen wasn't just proposing this mission, she was enjoying the Council's reaction. There was something fundamentally unsettling about a species that found humor in horrifying others. Dr. Chen, Threxenol tried again. Perhaps you could explain the benefits of this expedition. To help the Council understand your motivation. Sure. The human's enthusiasm was somehow worse than her casual dismissal of danger. So, beyond the obvious resource applications those superconductors I mentioned, could revolutionize quantum computing, there's the biological aspect. The pressure and radiation should have made complex life impossible, but our drones detected something moving in the deeper methane seas. Can you imagine? Life that evolved under those conditions could teach us so much about adaptive biology. She clicked to another image, a blurry capture of something vast and serpentine beneath the methane surface. We're calling them Proxima serpents for now. They seem to generate their own electromagnetic fields, possibly for navigation or hunting. Dr. Patel thinks they might even be sentient. First contact with a Category 10 native species. The xenobiology papers alone would be it's a predator. Counselor Hector of the warrior caste interrupted. You want to study apex predators on a death world? Well, they're not necessarily apex. The ecosystem there would be fascinating to map. What preys on something that big? What does it eat? How does the food chain function under that kind of pressure? So many questions. Sixtita noticed several counselors unconsciously backing away from the hologram, as if Dr. Chen's enthusiasm was somehow contagious or dangerous. Probably both. The request is denied, Threxenol stated flatly. The Galactic Council cannot sanction an expedition that is clearly ... double quotes. He searched for words ... suicidal. Dr. Chen's expression shifted. Sixtita had learned to fear that particular human look, the one that meant they were about to do something inadvisable. That's unfortunate, the human said. I was hoping for Council support. The shared research data would have been invaluable, but I understand your position. Then you'll abandon this plan. Oh no, we're still going. Tuesday, actually. Private funding. I just thought the Council might want observation rights. The documentary crew alone is offering documentary crew. Well, yeah. Humanity's next frontier, conquering Proxima C. It's already pre-sold to networks in 12 systems. People love watching humans do impossible things, apparently. We're weird that way. The council chamber erupted. 47 different species, trying to speak at once, created a cacophony that the universal translators couldn't parse. Through it all, Dr. Chen stood calmly, occasionally checking something on her personal device. Order. Threxenol's ceremonial staff sparked with authority. Dr. Chen, you cannot simply. You need permits, clearances. The hazard to local space traffic alone, actually. A new voice interrupted from the chamber entrance. They don't. Every head appendage and sensory organ turned to see a figure that shouldn't exist. A council legal arbitrator, taking humanity's side. Arbitrator Zed, ancient even by Therian standards, floated forward on his hover platform. I've reviewed human space law, sparse as it is. They've claimed no council protections, requested no territory grants, asked for no resources. Technically, they're still classified as a pre-contact civilization, conducting internal expansion. We have no jurisdiction. But, furthermore, Zed continued, his mechanical voice allowing no interruption. Denying observation rights means we forfeit any claim to research data. Mineral rights, or should they succeed, rate agreements for whatever they discover. The silence that followed was profound. Slowly, understanding dawned on the collected representatives. Humanity wasn't asking permission. They were offering the Council a chance to participate. Or be left behind. I believe Zixtita said, surprising herself by speaking. The human phrase is "the train is leaving the station." Dr. Chen beamed at her. Commander's been studying our idioms. Though technically, it would be more accurate to say the rocket is leaving the launch pad. The death trap is leaving for hell, muttered someone in the back. The translator, somehow managing the sarcasm, looked at his fellow counselors, at the insane human still smiling on the hologram, at the legal precedent being set before their eyes. The Galactic Council had stood for order, safety, and careful progress for 10,000 years. It had never encountered a species that heard certain death and thought, challenge accepted. Perhaps, he said slowly, each word feeling like a surrender. We could discuss observation protocols for scientific purposes. Wonderful. Dr. Chen clapped another gesture that several species found alarming. I'll have our people send over the safety waivers. Oh, and Commander Zixita, that offer to join us still stands. We could use someone with your rescue experience. Zixita's chromatophores went through their full spectrum twice before she answered. I'll consider it. As the council session devolved into heated debate, Dr. Chen quietly disconnected from the call. She had preparations to make, a crew to assemble, and a death world to introduce to humanity's particular brand of insanity. 3 days later, Zixita found herself signing papers she couldn't believe existed, preparing to join an expedition that violated every instinct her species had evolved. But as she watched the human crew prep their ship, laughing, joking, treating imminent doom like a group vacation, she began to understand something fundamental. Humans didn't conquer death because they had to. They did it because it was there, and may the galaxy help them all. They were just getting started. The human ship, persistent optimism, dropped out of hyperspace at what the navigation computer insisted was a safe distance from Proxima Centauri C. Commander Zixita, strapped into a specially modified chair that accommodated her tentacles, watched the viewscreen populate with warnings in 17 different languages. Gravity well exceeding safe parameters. Electromagnetic interference detected. Hull stress approaching critical levels. Recommend immediate retreat. Captain Marcus Webb, the human mission commander, glanced at the warnings and casually muted them. Arya, adjust shield harmonics to match the M frequency. Should smooth out the ride. Already on it, Cap, came the cheerful voice of Dr. Arya Okonkwo from engineering. Also, I'm reading some fascinating quantum fluctuations in the magnetosphere. Mind if we get closer for better readings? Zixita's chromatophores flashed alarm. Closer. We're already well within the death zone. Death zones, such a negative term, Dr. Chen commented from her science station. I prefer a high-opportunity environment. The ship lurched as it hit the outer edge of Proxima C's magnetic field, where other vessels would have been torn apart. The persistent optimism merely groaned and kept going. Zixita had spent the 3-day journey studying the ship's specifications, increasingly horrified by what humans considered safety features. The hull wasn't just reinforced, it was designed to flex under pressure, distributing stress like an organic membrane. The shields weren't barriers but adaptive fields that learned from impacts. Most disturbing of all, the emergency protocols didn't prioritize escape, but rather rapid, environmental adaptation. First storm front in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Sofia Petrov from navigation. It's a big one. Category 7, on the Fujito-Pearson scale, only 7. Captain Webb sounded disappointed. The betting pool started at 9. You have a betting pool on storm severity? Zixtita couldn't hide her horror. How else do you make meteorology interesting? Dr. Chen asked, genuinely puzzled. The storm hit like the fist of an angry god. The ship bucked, rolled, and screamed through winds that could have sandblasted a moon. Through it all, the human crew remained infuriatingly calm, calling out readings and adjustments like they were navigating a mild turbulence. Crystalline formations at 2 o'clock. Dr. Chen pressed her face against the viewport. Look at that light refraction. The pressure must be creating natural laser effects. Can we get a sample? Asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, already suiting up in her experimental pressure gear. Not during the storm, Captain Webb said, then paused. Actually, Chen, what's the mineral composition? Scanning, ... Oh wow, okay, those are definitely the superconductors, I predicted, but the structure is even better than weight. Her excitement shifted to intense focus. I'm reading artificial patterns in the crystal matrix. Silence fell over the bridge, even as the ship continued its violent dance through the storm. Define artificial, Captain Webb said quietly. Regular. Too regular for natural formation. It's almost like Dr. Chen's fingers flew over her console. Captain, these crystals aren't just growing in the storms. They're being cultivated. Zixita felt her hearts begin their panic rhythm. The Proxima serpents. They're not just animals. Looks like first contact's back on the menu. Dr. Okonkwo's voice crackled through the cum. Also, we've got company. Something big is following our heat signature. The view screen shifted to show the aft sensors. Through the methane haze and electromagnetic static, something moved. It was vast, serpentine as the blurry photos had suggested, but the details were what made even the humans pause. The creature-being entity wasn't just swimming through the liquid methane seas below. It was riding the storm, using the pressure differentials and magnetic fields to propel itself. It's beautiful, Dr. Tanaka whispered. It's also closing on us, Petrov noted. Intercept in 4 minutes at current speed. Weapons? Captain Webb asked. What weapons? Dr. Chen looked offended. This is a research vessel. We have mining charges, Dr. Okonkwo suggested. And I could probably overload the no. Zixita surprised herself by speaking. If they're sentient, if they're cultivating those crystals, then approaching with hostility would be rude, Captain Webb finished. Chen, any luck on communication? I'm trying everything. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, electromagnetic pulses matching their crystal frequencies. She paused. Wait, the storm patterns? The serpent isn't just riding them, it's... Captain, I think it's hurting us. Hurting us where? The answer came as the storm suddenly cleared, revealing a sight that silenced even the irrepressibly optimistic humans. Below them, carved into the methane ocean's frozen surface, was a city. Or something like a city. Crystalline spires rose, impossibly tall, each one humming with the same electromagnetic signature as the storm serpent. Geometric patterns spread between them, too perfect to be anything but deliberate design. Population scans. Captain Webb's voice was steady, but Zixita could see his hands gripping the command chair. Hundreds, maybe thousands. There, Captain, they're all watching us. Through the clear methane atmosphere, serpentine forms rose from the city, their bodies crackling with controlled electromagnetic fields. They moved in formation, creating patterns that looked almost like ... It's math, Dr. Chen breathed. There, showing us mathematical proofs with their formation flying. That's the Pythagorean theorem, and that's... I don't recognize that one, but the elegance they're testing us, Captain Webb realized, seeing if we're intelligent enough to communicate with. So respond, Zixita urged. Show them we understand. The humans exchanged glances. Then Dr. Chen's face split into a grin that Zixita had learned meant something inadvisable was about to happen. Petrov, can you plot a course that demonstrates the Fibonacci sequence through a DEATHWORLD storm while being watched by electromagnetic space serpents? The pilot considered. Give me 30 seconds to calculate approach vectors. What followed was the most terrifying and beautiful display of flying Zixtheta had ever witnessed. The persistent optimism danced through Proxima C's deadly atmosphere, tracing mathematical concepts with its trajectory. The serpents responded, their formations growing more complex, adding new variables to the equations. They're teaching us, Dr. Okonkwo reported, AW in her voice. Those patterns, it's their mathematics, base 8 system, but the principles, Captain, they're showing us how their storm cultivation works. Can we replicate it? Not exactly, but an alarm cut her off. Hull breach, in Section 4. The pressure differential on it. Dr. Tanaka was already moving, her experimental suit fully deployed. Someone cycled the airlock. In this atmosphere, Zixtheta couldn't believe what she was hearing. The pressure will. The suit's rated for it. Theoretically. Dr. Tanaka disappeared into the airlock before anyone could stop her. The external cameras showed her emerging into the hellish environment of Proxima C, moving with surprising grace. Despite the crushing gravity, she reached the breach, a hairline crack that was venting atmosphere and did something that made Zixtheta ass. Translator glitch. She pulled out what looked like hole tape and a welding torch. Is she, is she using adhesive strips on a hull breach? Carbon nanotube weave with pressure-responsive polymer, Captain Webb explained casually. Chun's invention. Holds better under pressure than traditional patches. The serpents had noticed the small human figure working on the ship's hull. One approached, its massive form dwarfing Dr. Tanaka, through the suit's camera feed. They could see her pause, look up at the creature, and then, wave. The serpent's electromagnetic field shifted, patterns flowing across its form. Dr. Chen gasped. It's asking if she needs help. How could it possibly? The math. They understand we're in distress. They're offering assistance. Dr. Tanaka, with the casual insanity, Zixtheta, was beginning to associate with all humans, held up her welding torch and made a gesture that somehow conveyed, I've got this, but thanks. The serpent's field pulsed in what might have been amusement. Then it did something unprecedented. It extended a tendril of concentrated electromagnetic energy, holding the hull plate in place while Dr. Tanaka worked. First contact achieved, Captain Webb said quietly. Chen, log it. Humanity's first cooperative action with a Category 10 sapient species, fixing a hull breach together. 15 minutes later, Dr. Tanaka was back inside, her suit steaming as it equalized pressure. The serpents had returned to their city, but one remained near the ship, its patterns now recognizable as mathematical communication. It's inviting us down, Dr. Chen translated, to the city. They want to. I think the concept is sheer knowledge of survival. They want to teach us. Zixtheta couldn't process it. More like exchange. They're curious how we survived the storm. Our approach was different from theirs. Dr. Chen's excitement was palpable. They've never seen organic life that wasn't native. We're as impossible to them as they are to us. Captain Webb stood, straightening his uniform. Okonkwo, can we modify a shuttle for those pressure conditions? Give me 2 hours and some of Tanaka's hull tape. Maybe some of those mining charges. For propulsion. You're going down there. Zixtheta knew she shouldn't be surprised anymore. Commander, Captain Webb smiled. We just made friends with a species that lives in conditions that would kill most of the galaxy in seconds. They build cities in hurricane winds and think in mathematics we can barely comprehend. You think we're going to pass up the chance to have dinner with them? Dinner? Figure of speech? Probably. Chen, any idea what they eat? Based on the electromagnetic patterns, they might feed directly on energy. We could probably rig something with the reactor. As the crew began planning their descent into the impossible city, Zixtita found herself recalibrating once again. Humans didn't just survive DEATHWORLDs, they didn't just adapt to them. They made friends with them. Commander, Dr. Chen asked, you want to come with us? Can't guarantee your suit will hold, but Tanaka's pretty confident in her modifications. Zixtita looked at the view screen, at the serpentine beings waiting in their crystalline city, at the crew already working on solutions to problems that shouldn't be solvable. I'll need a modified suit, she heard herself say, because if she'd learned anything from 3 days with humans, it was that impossible was just the beginning. The modified shuttle's stubborn hope descended through Proxima, sees methane atmosphere like a rock wrapped in prayers and whole tape. Commander Zixtita, encased in a suit that Dr. Tanaka had cheerfully described as probably not going to implode, watched the city grow larger through the viewport. Pressure holding steady, Dr. Tanaka reported from her pilot's seat. The Serpent's M field is actually helping. It's creating a localized pressure bubble around us. They're protecting us, Dr. Chen breathed, monitoring her instruments. Look at these readings. They're actively adjusting their field strength to match our descent rate. Captain Webb stood behind them, maglocked to the deck, somehow managing to look commanding, even while fighting 18G. Any luck on refining the translation? Matrix, getting there. Their mathematical language is incredibly complex, but there are patterns. They seem to have hundreds of ways to express what we'd call simple concepts, each with different emotional connotations. Emotional mathematics? Zixtita asked, immediately regretting it, as the effort of speaking under the gravity made her respiratory sacs ache. Why not? Dr. Chen's enthusiasm was undimmed by the crushing forces. Math is just another language. No reason it can't carry feeling. The shuttle touched down on what appeared to be a landing platform made of cultivated crystal. Through the hall, they could feel a harmonic vibration. The city's welcome. Atmosphere check. Captain Webb asked. Toxic, corrosive, and about 300 degrees below human survival temperature, Dr. Okonkwo reported cheerfully. But the suits are holding. Shall we meet the neighbors? The airlock cycled, and 5 figures emerged onto the platform. 4 humans, and 1 very nervous Valkyrie. The serpents were waiting. Up close, they were even more magnificent. Bodies that seemed to be equal parts organic tissue and controlled electromagnetic energy, shifting between states as needed. Where Zixtita had expected features, eyes, mouths, recognizable anatomy, there were, instead, patterns of light that flowed and changed with meaning. The lead serpent approached, its form stabilizing into something almost solid. The patterns across its body shifted into a mathematical sequence that Dr. Chen's tablet translated as welcome, curiosity, amusement, mutual, survival, . Captain Webb stepped forward, and Zixtita watched him perform what might have been the strangest diplomatic greeting in galactic history. He pulled out a handheld device and projected a holographic equation into the air. The same mathematical proof the serpents had first shown them, but with a small addition that changed it from a statement to a question. The serpent's form rippled with what could only be delight. Understanding joy, query about survival methods. What followed was the most unusual cultural exchange Zixtita had ever witnessed. The serpents led them through their city, showing them wonders that shouldn't exist. Gardens of crystalline formations that grew in response to electromagnetic songs. Nurseries where young serpents learned to ride storms by playing in miniature pressure chambers. Art galleries where mathematical equations were woven into visual displays that made Zixtida's 3 brains ache with their beauty. And through it all, the humans asked questions. How do you predict the storm patterns so accurately? Dr. Chen, is the crystal cultivation autonomous or directed? Dr. Okonkwo, what's the tensile strength of your building materials? Dr. Tanaka, have you ever considered space travel? Captain Webb, that last question caused a ripple of interest through their serpent guides. The lead being's patterns became incredibly complex. and Dr. Chen's translator struggled before producing. Space-beyond-storms/impossible-beauty/sadness- at limitation. They can't leave, Dr. Chen realized. Their bodies are adapted to this specific environment. The pressure, the electromagnetic fields, they need it all to survive. Truth, acceptance, curiosity-about-void-swimmers. Void Captain Webb smiled. That's us. What happened next would be debated in xenopsychology classes for decades. Dr. Tanaka, brilliant engineer, and apparently terrible at risk assessment, pulled up her suit's design specifications on a portable projector. Look, she said, showing the serpents how the suit maintained human survivable conditions in their environment. We swim in the void using portable environment. You could too. The serpents' reaction was immediate and intense. They crowded around the projection, their forms brightening with excitement. Mathematical queries flying so fast, Dr. Chen gave up trying to translate them all. Possibility/hope/technical-specifications-request. Oh no, Captain Webb said, but he was grinning. Tanaka, what have you started? Just a little technological exchange, she replied innocently. They show us storm riding, we show them pressure suits. Fair trade. Over the next 6 hours, Zixtita watched the impossible unfold. Humans and Proxima serpents working together, sketching designs in mathematics and light. The serpent's understanding of electromagnetic fields combined with human engineering produced concepts that made her head spin. Dr. Okonkwo and a serpent engineer were deep in discussion about shield harmonics. Dr. Chen was learning their emotional mathematics, occasionally laughing at what she called math jokes. Captain Webb was somehow negotiating a trade agreement using interpretive electromagnetic patterns. And Dr. Tanaka, she was helping design what might be the galaxy's first Category 10 rated spacesuit. The applications are incredible, she explained to Zixtita during a break. Their natural M manipulation could solve our radiation shielding problems, and if we can adapt their pressure distribution method to our ships, you're going to make it possible for more species to visit DEATHWORLDs, Zixtita said, not sure if it was an accusation or admiration. Why should humans have all the fun? Tanaka grinned. Besides, imagine what the serpents could teach us if they could visit other worlds. Their mathematical understanding alone could revolutionize our physics. A young serpent smaller, its patterns more chaotic approached Zixtita. It projected a simple equation that her translator recognized as a greeting, followed by what seemed to be a question about her coloration. Hesitantly, Zixtita let her chromatophores shift to a welcome pattern. The young serpent's delight was obvious, its form brightening as it tried to mimic her color changes with its electromagnetic field. You made a friend, Dr. Chen observed. They're fascinated by biological color change. Their young usually don't see anything that isn't storm-adapted. The serpent child projected another equation, this one obviously requesting play. Before Zixtita could respond, it began a game mathematical patterns that she was supposed to complete. Simple at first, then growing more complex. I don't know this mathematics, she admitted. Then learn, Captain Webb suggested. That's what we're here for. As Zixtita fumbled through mathematical play with an alien child, she found herself understanding something fundamental about humans. They didn't approach the universe with fear or caution. They approached it with curiosity and an unshakable belief that any problem could be solved, any environment survived, any friend made, even here, in a place that would kill them in seconds without their technology. They were trading jokes and designs and dreams with beings that most of the galaxy would run from in terror. The visit ended with an exchange of gifts. The serpents presented them with cultivated crystals that would allow limited electromagnetic communication across space. The humans reciprocated with something even more valuable, hope. We'll be back, Captain Webb promised, the mathematics of his statement carrying sincerity that transcended species. With better suits, better ships, maybe next time you can visit us. Impossibility/dream/gratitude-beyond-calculation. As the shuttle lifted off, fighting through the storms with new understanding of the patterns, Zixtida watched the city recede below. The serpents were already at work, their forms bright with activity as they began adapting human concepts to their own needs. Well, Dr. Chen said, reviewing her data, I'd call that a successful first contact. Successful. Zixtida's chromatophores couldn't settle on a color. We just gave a DEATHWORLD species the means to leave their planet. Exactly. Dr. Tanaka beamed. Isn't it wonderful? Back on the persistent optimism, as they prepared to leave Proxima C's system, a message arrived through the quantum communicator. The Galactic Council was in emergency session. Again, the Proxima Serpents have submitted an application for council membership, Captain Webb read, trying not to smile. They're citing technological exchange with humanity and requesting provisional status pending development of void swimming capability. That was fast, Dr. Okonkwo noted. They think in advanced mathematics, Dr. Chen reminded her. Bureaucracy is just another equation to solve. Zixtida stared at the message, then at the humans who were already planning their next expedition. What have you done? Opened the universe, Captain Webb said simply. The Council spent millennia telling species what's impossible. We just showed one that impossible is negotiable. The journey back to Council space took 3 days. By the time they arrived, 16 other species had requested information about human-style environmental adaptation technology. The Proxima Serpents had begun broadcasting mathematical theories that were revolutionizing for different fields of physics, and Dr. Tanaka's suit designs were being studied by engineers across the galaxy. When Commander Zixtida stood before the Council to give her report, she looked out at the assembled representatives of civilized space. They looked smaller somehow, their careful categories and safety protocols revealed as the limitations they were. The humans didn't conquer Proxima C, she said, her chromatophores steady with certainty. They made friends with it. They looked at a death world and saw not danger, but potential. They met a species adapted to impossible conditions and asked, "Would you like to see the stars?" She paused, letting her words sink in. And perhaps, most terrifying of all, the death world said yes. In the back of the chamber, Dr. Chen whispered to Captain Webb, "Think we should tell them about the proposal to visit that black hole nursery? Let's give them a week to process this first," he whispered back. "We're not cruel." "Since when?" "Fair point. Chen, start drafting the proposal. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of careful exploration, of safety above all, of avoiding the impossible, was ending. The age of human curiosity had begun, and somewhere in the methane seas of Proxima C, serpents made of storm and mathematics looked up at foreign stars and began to dream of swimming in the void.